I'm not talking about attention for attention's sake. I'm not talking about going viral. I'm not talking about a stunt. I'm not talking about surprise and delight. If you want to create conversation just because, go rent an elephant. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something that you do different in your business that causes your customers to talk about you every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year.
This is Experts Unleashed, revealing how professionals and entrepreneurs transform experience into income while positively impacting the world. For years, Joel Erway has helped entrepreneurs develop and launch their expert-based businesses, growing them beyond 6 and even 7 figures a year. Now, a professional expert serves their community through paid training, education, or service. This podcast will help you design and execute your plan to become a 6 or 7 figure expert without a massive team. To get more information or apply now, visit theperfectexpert.com. Let's get started.
Hey experts, welcome to another special episode of Experts Unleashed. And guys and gals, you are in for an amazing treat today. I have a very special guest on the show today. We're going to do an awesome interview. He's got a brand new book that has already been released. We're going to chat all about it. My special guest today is Jay Baer from Convince and Convert. Jay, welcome to the show, my man.
Joel, thanks so much. I know we couldn't find an expert this week, so we got me instead, but I'll do the best I can to support them.
Very humble, very humble. I mean, you only have, 6 best-selling books, so no, you are not an expert in anything. Let me give you a quick bio that I have on Jay real quick. I'll speak on his behalf and just talk about his credentials. If you aren't familiar with Convince and Convert, I know it's a very, very, very popular marketing resource. And so Jay is a 7th generation entrepreneur, author of 6 best-selling books, founder of 5 multi-million-dollar companies, Hall of Fame keynote speaker and advisor to the world's most iconic brands in the area of customer acquisition via word of mouth and customer experience. How was that for an intro? Does that work?
Yeah, that's about right. That all sounds good.
Awesome, dude. So we're talking today about something that everyone is going to want to learn. Okay. It's all about word of mouth marketing, getting your customers to sell your product and service for you, right? You wrote a brand new book called Talk Triggers, and that is what we're going to be talking about today, Talk Triggers. So why don't you introduce us? What is a talk trigger and why is it so important for my community, specifically the coaches, the consultants, and the experts of the world to grow their business?
Yeah. Well, here's the part that's interesting, Joel. The research shows that between 50 and 91% of all purchases are influenced by word of mouth. And certainly in the expertise business, whether you're a speaker, an author, you're selling an informational product, the very best way to grow that business is for the customers of your business to do that growing for you. Now, there's a saying in business, perhaps you've heard it. It's not entirely true, but it's true enough for purposes of this conversation, which is that advertising is a tax paid by the unremarkable. And I certainly am in the information business. I have courses. I obviously do a lot of speaking and books and consulting and all that kind of stuff. And acquisition at the top of the funnel, whether it's warm media, cold media, is expensive. It's difficult. It's complicated. It's hard. And so the best operations, right, the best people who are in the expertise game don't spend a lot of money on advertising because they don't have to. Their satisfied customers tell their friends, which become the next generation of customers and the next and the next and the next. That's the right way to do it. But here's the crazy thing, okay? Nobody's going to debate this point with us. No one's going to say, oh, no, Jay, Joel, word of mouth isn't important at all. No one believes that. But nobody has an actual strategy. And that's the part that we really have to take a second and consider. Because you've got a desk full of strategies, right? You've got a marketing strategy. You probably have a content marketing strategy. You probably have a social media strategy. You might have a public relations strategy. You might have a crisis management strategy. You got a million strategies. But the one strategy you do not have is a word of mouth strategy. We just take it for granted. We just assume that our customers will talk about us. But why do we think that? And if they are talking about us, what are they saying? And is that a consistent story that actually helps our business? So what's happening right now is that fundamentally every expert, fundamentally everybody listening and watching right now is doing word of mouth on accident. And what this book that I wrote with Daniel Lemon, it's called Talk Triggers, what it does is give you a specific framework for how to do word of mouth on purpose.
Interesting. Okay. So it's a word of mouth on purpose, right? I'm putting myself in the position, well, I have my own courses and coaching and consulting, right? And I know that I fall victim to shiny object syndrome, just like probably most other people, right? And I'm trying to think of like why I haven't personally focused on word of mouth more often and just solidifying like what happens with word of mouth. I think because it's so intangible, because I can't see it. So it's like I can't see it.
And you can see it if you choose to see it. But I think that what typically happens with experts is we all fall into the same trap, which is we believe that competency creates conversations. That because you're an expert, people will talk about that, or because your course is good, people will talk about that, or your book is good, or your consulting output is good. Here's the problem with that. We don't talk about things that are good because we expect good. All your competition is good as well. Like, I don't know everybody listening or watching. I probably know some of these folks for sure. But I know this for a fact, Joel. Nobody ever says, hey, let me make sure to tell you about this perfectly adequate experience I just had. Right? No, nobody ever says that, right? Why? Because it's a terrible story. And this is all about a story. So when I say do word of mouth on purpose, what I mean is that each and every one of us needs to have a talk trigger. And a talk trigger is a strategic operational choice that you make that compels conversation. Your customers, your audience, your students, your readers, your listeners, your viewers simply cannot help themselves. They have to tell somebody else about this special little thing that you do. Everybody in the expertise business should have a talk trigger because it gives their audience a specific crafted story to tell. And when you give people a story to tell, they will tell it. But right now, we're just letting them figure out their own story. We let our audience figure out what story they want to tell about us instead of giving them the raw materials for a consistent story.
Okay. So how would somebody do that? Like if we want to give them something to talk about, you mentioned, I want to highlight something really important that I want all of my experts to listen to is good is expected, right? If you think about the sales cycle, like they're buying good, like they're not buying okay. So like when you think, oh yeah, I provided my service or I did that, it was good enough, but like that is the bar. Like that is the bar. So they're not going to.
Yeah, you know how many stories I've told about flicking on a switch and lights came on? 0 stories.
That's the expectation. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So great. Like how do we identify talk triggers? How do we create these talk triggers to strategically get our customers to talk?
Let me give you a couple of examples of talk triggers. So one of my favorite examples is a restaurant in Sacramento, California. It's called Skip's Kitchen. And it's a very simple business. We've all been to restaurants like this. It's counter service. So you walk to the front and there's a board there and you say, okay, I would like 2 patty melts and I would like an onion rings and I would like a chocolate shake. And then they bring your food out to you when your food is ready to your table. Okay. Except they have a talk trigger. They have a word of mouth generating operational choice that they have made that they deploy every day for every customer. After you order, but before you pay, Joel, they say, let's play a game. Okay. The counter person pulls out a deck of playing cards from underneath the counter and then fans them out face down in front of you and says, pick a card. And you select a card. And if you get a joker, your entire meal is free, whether you've ordered for just yourself or a party of 10. Now, Skip's Kitchen has been in business for 10 years. They have spent a grand total of $0 on advertising ever. There's a line to get in almost every day. They were just named the 29th best hamburger restaurant in America by USA Today newspaper. Now, on average, about 3 people a day win this little joker game mathematically. And when they win, they go batshit crazy, right? They are freaking out. They're like taking patty mouth selfies and putting reviews on Yelp and TripAdvisor and calling their mom crying, and a high school marching band shows up. It's quite a scenario. And you don't have to win to tell that story. You just have to be given the chance to win to tell that story. It is a talk trigger. It is an operational decision that they have made to purposefully give their customers something to talk about. I'll give you an example from the speaking business. My friend Jessica Pettit is a fantastic speaker on social justice issues. Now, like most people who are speakers and authors, et cetera, she's got a website about her and her work and her expertise. And then there's a contact form, like, let us know if you want Jessica to come out and give a speech and, book a date on her calendar, blah, 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 all that stuff, right? Well, I've got one too. A lot of people do. And in many cases, you might have an autoresponder behind that form submission. So the form comes in and you send an instantaneous email autoresponder, says, hey, we got your message. Someone from Jay's office will call you back soon. Well, Jess turned that very mundane and perfunctory autoresponder email into her talk trigger. Among her many talents, one is that she is an expert at folding a fitted bed sheet. Now, the fitted sheet is the one with the elastic corners, which is always really weird and funky. And so it's really hard to fold. So usually just pile it up in a basketball sized pile and put it in the corner of the closet. It's kind of perplexing for many people. Her autoresponder email is a video of her demonstrating exactly how to fold a fitted sheet. And then the tagline of the video is, you've just seen her fold a fitted sheet. Imagine what she can do at your next event. That's awesome, right? That is a fantastic talk trigger. It's an operational choice, right? You could choose to send a super boring confirmation email. She chose to do something that people will talk about. And I'm telling you the story right now.
And it's probably gone viral. So yeah, that's fascinating, right? So and it's so off the wall, I'm assuming that's got to be one of the key criteria of a talk trigger, right? It's got to be unique.
It can be, yeah. I mean, it has to be remarkable, right? So not necessarily unique, but remarkable in the true definition of that word, Joel, which is worthy of remark. Some of this is just science, right? Human beings are physiologically wired to discuss things that are different and ignore things that are average. So if you expect it and you've seen it before, you're like, yeah, okay. Go back to my light switch example. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a category of one, but it certainly has to be something that people don't anticipate. That's what triggers the talk, if you will.
So they're not anticipating it, right? So it's got to be implanted in their mind. It's got to be remarkable and memorable. So they would want to talk about it.
That's it. They want to tell the story, and it also has to be relevant. That's a really important one too, because she ties it back into how hard it is to fold a fitted sheet, and then how hard it is to talk about social justice issues, right? So that's how she ties it into her master brand. This is a really important point, especially for experts. And I want to just take a minute here to explain this. I'm not talking about attention for attention's sake. I'm not talking about going viral. I'm not talking about a stunt. I'm not talking about surprise and delight. If you want to create conversation just because, go rent an elephant. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something that you do different in your business that causes your customers to talk about you every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year. Okay. This is a strategy. This is not a lottery ticket of attention. Now, when you come up with that strategy, though, it works way better if it's relevant, right? If it actually ties back to your actual expertise, your brand. So you and I talked a little bit off air about one of the classic examples of a talk trigger is DoubleTree Hotels by Hilton. So every day, every guest that checks into a DoubleTree property worldwide receives a warm chocolate chip cookie when they check in. It's a really good cookie. They've been doing this every day for 30 years. 30 years. Today, as we're having this conversation, DoubleTree will hand out 75,000 chocolate chip cookies today.
Yep.
That's a lot of. Now, in the book, Talk Triggers, we did 4 separate, very, very large research projects. This is not Jay says do this. This is all based on research. And one of the research projects, we surveyed hundreds and hundreds of DoubleTree customers. And we asked them, hey, what do you notice? And it turns out that 34% of them have, without being asked or aided or prompted in any way, told somebody else a story about that cookie in the last 30 days. So if you do the math on that, what it means is that approximately 25,500 people a day talk about that cookie. Mm-hmm. Now, companion question, when's the last time you saw a DoubleTree ad? Not very often, right? Because the cookie is the ad and the guests are the marketing department. But one of the reasons that Talk Trigger works so well is that it's relevant, okay? It ties into their master brand positioning. There's 14 brands in the Hilton portfolio, right? So you've got the Hilton, you've got Conrad, Hilton Garden Inn, Hampton Inn, et cetera, DoubleTree. Each of them have their own positioning, of course, because they don't want to cannibalize each other's guests. DoubleTree's positioning is the warm welcome. Yep. They want to own that 8-9 minute gap between when you set foot on the property and when you set foot in your room. Like that little snapshot in time, they want to be great at that. So they put more time, effort, money into lobby design than most properties at that price point. They train the front desk staff more than most properties at that price point. And the cookie ceremony, and it is a ceremony, is a big part of that. So it's not just a pile of cookies on a counter. It's an oven. Like there's an oven behind the desk, and the front desk clerk turns, goes to the oven, grabs a warm cookie, puts it in a bag, and then hands it to you. It's got to be a hand-to-hand pass. That's the brand standard, right? So warm welcome is the brand positioning. Warm cookie is the manifestation of that. And especially for experts, it's really important to make sure that your talk trigger helicopters back up to whatever it is that you stand for and whatever it is that you do.
Mm. That's so 2 instances on this conversation I have recalled in very recent memory within the past month. Number one, I'd say about 2 weeks ago, I was YouTubing how to fold a fitted sheet. Now, obviously,
you see,
it was just very ironic that you're talking about that, but I've searched for the video.
It is very difficult. It is more difficult than you would expect.
Yeah, it's anyway. We don't need to go into.
That's great. I'm going to send her a note about that. She's going to love it.
Yep. But so I did search.
You have her on the show. She's great.
But the other one was I was giving a talk in Salt Lake City, and we stayed in Heber City, Utah, and I was staying at a Best Western Plus for 3 nights. We were my wife and I and my son were doing a little extended vacation after the talk. And at the Best Western Plus, a very, very similar experience. Every night at 5:00, they made homemade chocolate chip cookies. And when I left, I must have told 5 people about that because I had it every single night. I went down, I'm like, cookies are here. I'm going to go get one for my son, go get one for myself. And it's remarkable because like we are now the advertising and so.
And what's interesting about that is you didn't talk about the hotel, right? You didn't talk about, well, there's a hotel and there's beds and a shower, right? Because there's no story there, right? It has to be something that creates an actual story. Now, one thing that's important to recognize, this is no replacement for actually knowing what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And I've done presentations on Talk Triggers at the National Speakers Association and other big groups of experts. And I really want to emphasize that first, foremost, you have to have your T's and C's. T's and C's. When I say T's and C's, that stands for you have to have a terrific topic that can create change. That's non-negotiable. If you do not have a terrific topic and you cannot create change, then no talk trigger in the world can help you. You have to have T's and C's first because the talk trigger supports your actual expertise. It is not a replacement for your actual expertise, which is why the people who are best at talk triggers are those that actually really have true expertise and a platform and a skill set and a history. Tony Newman, for example, terrific speaker, great expert. She's amazing. Her talk trigger is the red ladder. So every time she does a keynote, she actually travels, no joke, with a 6-foot tall red ladder drags it around the country. And it's a prop that she uses in her talk. And it's all about the higher you're up on the ladder, the better you can see your organization and sort of a perspective type thing. And then after the talk, she sends to each meeting planner a miniature red ladder and then asks them to take pictures and put it on Instagram of different places that the ladder is. Her website has all kinds of red ladders on it. That is her talk trigger. But it is in support of her very, very excellent program and her years and years and years of expertise in the field.
Yep. So basically what you're saying is it's you can't use it to, supplant or replace, what you actually do. It has to support it. Correct?
Yeah, it's not a stunt, right? I mean, it won't work if you don't actually know what you're talking about. People are not, put it this way. Let me go back to your example. The cookies of the Best Western Plus were amazing, and you've told that story. But if your bathtub was full of hair and your room was full of spiders, you would tell a very different story. You have to get the actual core operations right. And then the talk trigger becomes the story. If the operations aren't right, the flaw in the operations becomes the story. And in our business, the operations is, do you actually know what you're talking about? It's the T's and C's. Can you have a terrific topic, and can you create change?
You know what's fascinating, because when we stayed at that Best Western, here's something that actually happened. They screwed up a couple of times, and they got a lot more runway from us because of service and
they bribed you with cookies.
They bribed me with cookies. It's true. They bribed me with cookies, but
good. It's good strategy.
They cleaned our room one night and threw out all of our food that we had, and we had some expensive food for my son. And then they just forgot to clean our room the second night. And so I will tell you, had I not been kind of wowed with their service, and they did a really, really nice job, they made it up to us, but it allowed for more runway and more leeway for them to kind of make up.
Well, you nailed it when you said they made it up to you. In my previous book I wrote called Hug Your Haters, which is all about customer service. There's an amazing psychological phenomenon. It's one of the most powerful things in business, which is that if a company makes a mistake, error in some way, but then fixes it satisfactorily, the customer who's impacted, you in this case, are more loyal and will buy more than a customer who never had a problem at all. So one of the best ways to grow a company is to have a problem that you fix. Because when you have a problem and you fix it, it creates this bond psychologically between the customer and the company. It's very, very powerful. I was doing a presentation a few months ago I know it's amazing. It's like the Stockholm syndrome. I was doing a presentation in the appliances industry, and a guy comes up to me after my keynote and says, Jay, I work for this big appliances company, and our most profitable division does exactly what you say. Apparently the way it works is somebody calls in and says, hey, my dryer's broken or whatever. And then they log in the database, and then if they can fix it, right, they send a replacement part or roll a field service technician or whatever. If it gets fixed, they flag that in the database. 2 weeks later, they've got an inside sales team that calls all those customers who had a problem that was fixed and try to cross-sell them or upsell them another product. And it's the number one most successful and most profitable division in the company.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Amazing, right? It's crazy stuff.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that it's almost like we're rewarding not things breaking, but maybe it's because we're trained as consumers to just, then this is just a broad assumption.
I mean, hey, look, if I'm in the information business, I think about, hey, we're going to have the special webinar on Monday. Oh no, the webinar didn't work. And then you fix it. And then everybody's like, oh my God, Joel's the best. He, made good on the webinar. That's maybe a little more Machiavellian than I'd want to get into, but from a pure psychology standpoint, it's a smart move. And I'm not kidding. Create a problem that you can fix is one of the best ways to really create loyalty. And I think it's because so often when there is a problem, it's not fixed, right? Or it just gets worse. Our expectations in that scenario are so very, very low.
Yep. And that's where I was going.
Yeah, that if anything gets solved, you're like, no way, it actually got solved. I'm the manager of my son's high school hockey team, and we ordered jerseys from a different company this year, and we're now halfway through the season and don't have jerseys. because it's been like this comedy of errors and like this whole thing, right? And so now we're super frustrated. But if it was like, hey, sorry, the jerseys are late, but we ordered them from somewhere else and here they are in a week, we would have been like, oh my God, you guys are the best. We'll order jerseys from you forever. But instead, it's like this, baton death march of uniforms.
Yeah, I mean, just putting myself in the situation, had we not had good customer service experience, they throw out our food on night one, then they completely forget to refill our coffee and even clean our room on night two.
Yeah, you had one job. Like cleaning the room is pretty standard service. Yeah,
it's pretty standard. But yet here I am. I'm on the podcast talking about them, and I talked about them with 4 or 5 other customers. It's very.
Now you're wondering whether or not they purposely didn't clean your room, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. They read one of your books.
Yeah, the Best Western Plus is doing some serious deep psychology with your guests, baby. I don't know. It's not impossible. It's not impossible. It would be unlikely, but you never know. You never know.
So let's get back to Talk Triggers because we kind of went off topic a little bit. So here we are. We've got service providers. We've got coaches and consultants, right? And like, okay, great. I get the idea of a talk trigger. Like, I think of, like when you said the red ladder is getting, published on Instagram and social media, the whole 9 yards, right? Like, how difficult is it to come up with that talk trigger? Like, is there not like a formula, but like, what's the idea generation of like coming up with that talk trigger?
Well, let me tell you the wrong way to do it.
Okay.
The wrong way to do it is to just brainstorm one, because if it was that easy, you'd probably already have one. And a lot of times something that you think is talkable might not actually be talkable. So the right way to do it, and we go through this in great detail in the book, is a 6-step process. It's actually the same process that we use in my consulting organization to build talk triggers for brands all around the world. And I'll just give you a couple of the key pieces. The first one is to map out your customer journey. So what are all the touch points that you have with customers? Let's say you're selling a course, right? So maybe they're going to find you online, or they're going to see an Instagram ad, Facebook ad, whatever. They're going to get your landing page, and then they're going to get to some sort of tripwire, initial free information. They're going to consume that. Then you're going to send them an email, then another email, then another email. There's going to be a webinar, then a follow-up call, and then something else, and then they're going to sign up, and then there's each week of the course. So you map all that out, right? So you get your kind of customer journey map created. Then what I want you to do, and this is real work, but that's what is required, is ideally you do 18 interviews, 6 each in 3 groups of customers. 6 new customers, people who are new to you, they really haven't spent a lot of time with you. 6 longtime customers, so maybe people who have bought 2 or 3 courses from you or what have you. And then 6 lost customers, people who you used to have and then abandoned. And each of those 666 conversations, you're asking about that customer journey. And what you want to ask them is, at each step of this process, what did you expect would happen? When you got to the purchase page for the course, what did you expect to find? What did you expect would happen? See, what you're trying to do is create an expectation map, because once you know what people expect, you by definition then know what people do not expect. And the gold in the river that becomes the talk trigger, that creates the conversation, that builds your business, has to be something that they don't expect. That make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So once you've got the map of expectations, then you come up with some talk trigger ideas. And the book helps because there's a whole category of different types of talk triggers and different systems. There's a whole matrix there to make it a little bit more logical. You come up with some ideas. Usually when we do it, it's between 8 and 10, but we do this for a living. You might come up with 3 to 5 ideas. You pick one. Okay, you pick one idea. You're like, you know what? I think based on what I know that people will notice this and talk about it, and I think I can actually do it operationally. And then you test it. Incredibly important. You have to test it. You don't just roll it out. So you would give it or expose it to every nth customer, or just the customers of a particular course, or only early buyers, or there's a lot of ways to segment it, of course, based on your type of business, but you test it to a control group of a particular set of customers. And then you see whether or not it's talkable. So you do that a couple of ways. One, you just see if they mention it to you via email, in a recorded phone call. Do people talk about it in social media? But then the best way to do it is through a 3-question survey. So you follow up with these customers who have experienced the Talk Trigger, and you ask them these 3 questions. Have you told anybody about the stuff that we've done together? Yes or no? If yes, what did you tell them? Open-ended. 3rd question. Did you mention any of these things? A list of 6 or 7 attributes, one of which is the Talk Trigger. When you ask those 3 questions, you see, is there a conversation happening? Is the Talk Trigger mentioned in an unaided scenario? And then is the Talk Trigger mentioned in an aided scenario where there's a list? That's the right way to do it. That's the 3-question survey that will then demonstrate whether or not your idea, your candidate trigger, if you will, has enough talkability to be viable. If so, then you roll it out to all customers in all circumstances.
Yeah, there's a lot of powerful things that you mentioned there. So a couple things that I want to highlight. Expectations. Right. So inside of our group, The Perfect Expert and Experts Unleashed, we teach our clients to sell very little. And what I'd say by that is, like, do not sell all the features and benefits, right? Because if you're selling that hard, the expectation is very, very high to deliver, right? Mm-hmm. Even though you're always going to fulfill on that, how do we craft that message to be short and succinct so they see the value and they enroll anyway, right? Because we want to over deliver to them, over provide those expectations. We were going to deliver the same anyway, but if you're selling your course, like, oh, I've got 75 bonuses that you're gonna get when you enroll, like, you're really pushing really hard, but
wait, there's more.
And if you never revealed that and they bought anyway, and then you over delivered, you're like, oh, by the way, like, hey, you're gonna love this bonus, like, how much more impactful would that be? They weren't expecting it.
Because when you do it that way, the bonuses can actually, in some cases, be the Talk Trigger because they didn't see it coming, right? So talkable generosity and talkable usefulness are 2 of the ways to do it. And in the information business, you can actually combine those 2, right? So here's a bunch of free information that you didn't think you were going to get. And people are like, wow, I'm blown away.
Yep. Exactly. And now they're actually bonuses, right? Not some, sales bonuses, but they're actual bonuses for your customers. And
yes. And I love the way you think about that. The position of that is very strong. It's smart.
Yeah. It's extremely powerful. Actually, my business partner, Nick Peterson, he's the one who really introduced me to that because he's big on customer referrals and generating word of mouth. And he goes, I never sell hard in the front end because I always want to make sure that even if I'm going to give them the same stuff, I want them to get bought in on the ambiguity of the big promise and result, and that's it, right? How I do it and all the other stuff that I'm going to give them, like, I want that to be a customer referral machine, and that's his entire intention. So I want to give him credit for that. But the other thing that I wanted to mention is your interview and the 3 types of customers that you call out: your new customers who haven't experienced much time with you, your repeat customers, and then your lost customers. And I can't think of anybody who has, like, in my sphere of influence, in my world, who has done those interviews. And I think that those are extremely, extremely impactful. And I think a lot of people would probably be scared to talk to those lost customers. I mean, how difficult do you think?
Right. Which you shouldn't be, right? Because the people who have left are the most important people because they will, they'll give you insights that can really build your business. I mean, the people who look, I talked about this in my Hug Your Haters book. The most overrated thing in business is praise. Mm-hmm. Massively overrated. It feels great, but it doesn't teach you anything because you already know what you're good at. You don't need somebody to ratify what you're good at. You already know it. Mm-hmm. What makes you a better expert, what makes you a better husband, spouse, father, friend, colleague is negative feedback and criticism. But we're so quick to run from that, and we should be running toward it, right? Mm-hmm. If somebody wants to go on record to say, hey, here's why I was dissatisfied, you need to spend a lot of time with those people because they will teach you things that you need to know.
Yep. 100%. And it's extremely powerful. And I guarantee probably, like, I wonder what the stat is. Like, I wonder how many people actually talk to them because it's easy to hide behind that and get pissed off at a bad Amazon review or, somebody, screaming at you on social media. Awesome. Okay. So what I want to do, Jay, now is I want to go to the rewind section, right? And so specifically, I want to focus on talk triggers, right? And you've got a bunch of books. Where did talk triggers, like, where did the idea come from? Like, when did you realize, like, this is something that I have to really get out there?
I started writing about it in 2011 and would come back to it, here or there. I wrote a bunch of other books in the meantime. But I wrote this book with Daniel Lemon the same way that I write all my books, which is it's great to have a large consulting business because we get to interact with a lot of smart marketers and business owners and listen to their challenges and concerns. And what was happening is our clients were saying, we've got a decent handle now on the mechanics of marketing. Like we feel like we understand Facebook better, and we understand content marketing better. We understand nurturing better, but we're not really sure always what to say. We kind of know how to say it, but we're not really sure what to say. And it sort of gave me this awakening, like, wow, here we are, almost 2019, and people still don't have the story part figured out. Right. And it's like, wow, if you don't have the story part figured out, how to deploy that story is not very important. And so we said, maybe we should really go deep on just this idea, whether it's online or offline, whether it's Twitter or face-to-face. How do we get people to tell a consistent story about us? And let's get that problem solved. And then we can go back and worry about, okay, is this a blog post or a podcast or whatever other, tactical question you might have.
Yeah. Super powerful. Okay. So you started in 2011, right? And here it is, got released in 2018. So
yeah,
where, I'm kind of curious, like how come it didn't, like, what caused it to be, I don't want to say delayed, but how come it wasn't released?
Because I don't, historically, my company and the things that I speak about were more overtly digital, right? So I wrote a book about social media. I wrote a book about content marketing. I wrote a book about online customer service, right? It's all things that happen on a computer or on a phone. That was sort of my thing, right? I've been in digital marketing now since 1993. Mm-hmm. So even though my ideas around talk triggers and the power of word of mouth have been around for a long time, I was somewhat reluctant to write a book about it because I felt like it would be incongruent for me, sort of known to be a digital guy, to write a book that is not really digital at all. I mean, certainly online word of mouth is important, but it's a book that's not about online per se. Mm-hmm. And I just felt like it would be a little too weird. And then I finally said, you know what? I don't care. Like, this needs to be done. This needs to be written. We're at the point where this has to happen. And I just said, I'm going to do it. And we did it.
Awesome. What are some of, your talk triggers in your business and what type of impact has that made?
I would say we have 4. In the consulting business, we use talkable responsiveness. So speed, where if clients call or email, we reply to everybody within 5 minutes, 16 hours a day. And so that is not what you typically get in a high dollar, expensive, Fortune 100 consulting environment. And so that's our talk trigger there. For me personally, as an expert, I have 3. One is the crazy suit game. Can't really tell so much on this camera, but this is like my most calm of suits. So it's all crazy suits all the time. That's my thing. My website looks like that and everything else. And so that on stage is sort of my signature calling card. Also, I don't think I have one in front of me. My business card is a bottle opener. And that's a really good talk trigger. People come up to me all the time, like, Jay, I got your business card 8 years ago at a conference and I still have it in my golf bag. And I'm like, man, I don't care where you have it. If you can tell me on site where my business card is amongst all of your possessions 8 years later, like, my work here is done. That is an effective talk trigger. And then another one I do that's more of a micro audience is I have these Amazon gift cards, has my logo on it and stuff, says thank you. I give these to every AV guy at every keynote I do. And before the speech, I say, hey, thanks very much for making me look good. Here's an Amazon gift card for you, from me. And the tech teams love it, and nobody ever pays attention to them. And they're really important. And trust me, they talk. They talk and they talk and they talk and they talk about speakers and experts. So I like doing that one too.
That's awesome. So your talk triggers go kind of beyond the customer, right? I mean, who would have thought
in that case? Yeah. Although even though AV guys don't hire me per se, right? They influence sort of perception. So yeah.
Well, it's all about branding at that point too. And so, making sure that you look good, you're seen, you're heard, and they don't screw up your video. It's like they pay extra attention to your audio. Oh crap, your mic's on, or I love it. Awesome. Yep. Well, Jay, I've had a blast on this conversation. I mean, me too. It's great, super fun. Yep, all about Talk Triggers. I want to do a quick recap of kind of what we've chatted about and how this can apply to the expert-based business. So, obviously, this is all about word of mouth, and we talked about the types of talk triggers. You gave a bunch of examples, and we talked about the ingredients of talk triggers, and you gave a whole bunch of examples. And I thought your stat in the very beginning, where we talked about 50 to 91% of all purchases are influenced by word of mouth, and that's astounding. Like that's you can't almost get bigger than that. I mean,
no, it's insane. It's crazy.
Yep. And so it's all about making sure that we can generate that and steer the conversation in the right direction. And some of the other things we talked about, which I thought were fascinating after you were kind of elaborating on this, is I know that talk triggers give runway for when you do screw up, right? Because all businesses
you experienced it.
Yeah. I mean, like all businesses, we're going to make mistakes, right? And how can we extend that runway and open up new opportunities? And you also shared that when you do screw up, that's a big opportunity to fix it and sell them more stuff. That's just a huge profit center, which is very counterintuitive that I think a lot of people probably wouldn't have considered. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to make sure that we covered about talk triggers and about this whole concept of getting customers to grow your business for you?
I would say that if you go to talktriggers.com, there is a tremendous amount of free stuff there. Bonuses, you might ask. There's PDF summaries, there's group discussion guides, there's free PowerPoint presentations, there's infographics, there's videos, there's research. There is a ton of stuff at talktriggers.com, yours for the taking. Would love folks to get a book, but even if they don't, and more importantly, I want you to put this into practice. I want experts to be better at this because I know it will build your business. I will also say that there is a talk trigger for the book Talk Triggers, which stands to reason. I would think it would be ironic if we did not have a talk trigger for our own book. And it is this, Joel. On the back of the book, it says, satisfaction guaranteed. If you buy this book and don't like it, go to talktriggers.com and send the authors a note, and they will buy you any other book of your choosing. And that's true. So if you buy the book, you don't like it, and you want me to get you instead like a first edition Bible. I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll make it happen. So that is my promise to you. Therefore, you have absolutely no risk in buying this book. There is literally no downside. If you don't like it, I will buy you anything else that you want that is a book. So knock yourselves out.
Awesome. So Jay, where can people connect with you? Right. So obviously talktriggers.com, we got that link that we'll put in the show notes, but like where else can we find and connect with you?
Our main site is convinceandconvert.com, which is our very large online digital magazine for marketers and business owners. Everything you can even imagine about influencer marketing, about content marketing, social media marketing, online customer service. We have a whole network of podcasts, including my show, Social Pros, all kinds of stuff there. Convinceandconvert.com.
Awesome. So if you're listening right now, make sure to go check out both of those websites, talktriggers.com and convinceandconvert.com. Anyone who's inside of The Perfect Expert, Jay doesn't even know this yet, but we will be buying them a book.
Thanks.
They will be getting them. They'll be getting a copy of Talk Triggers because I believe in it so much.
I appreciate that. I'll sign them. Send them over here. I'll make sure to sign them first.
Yeah, definitely. That'd be great. So if you enjoyed this episode, this has been jam-packed with tons and tons of value. Please do us both a favor. I want you to go connect with Jay and just let him know you heard him on Experts Unleashed on our show. Give him some love, give him some praise, buy his book, and just start to follow his stuff. I've been following Convince and Convert for a very long time, and I'm a huge fan of his stuff, and I love his crazy suits. So I'm glad I got to experience it firsthand.
I'll send you some photos of some crazier ones. This one's pretty subdued today, but yesterday I had one that was like a raspberry plaid confection. It was pretty spectacular.
Awesome, Jay. All right, so we are going to wrap up our interview. Thank you so much, Jay, for joining us on this show. And for all of you listening right now, go connect with Jay, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Experts Unleashed. If you're looking for new and innovative ways to design and execute your plan to become a 6 or 7-figure expert without the massive team, apply now at theperfectexpert.com.